Previously on Midlife.
We've had some... Is this what we're going to talk about?
I guess so. I guess so, because we kind of... I mean, it's going to be like walking on eggshells. I really don't know how to talk about our feedback.
Was it edited? What on earth are you talking about? Sadness, shoulders, ease at how we fall into roles. You both talk about how it affects you, but I must have missed what exactly it is.
As backfill, you can say what the it was.
Wow. The it, I would say, was the sense of a woman orienting or fixing her entire being on pleasing a man.
That was one set of ears receiving the conversation that we had, like, you're missing out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and what the hell were you talking about?
Yeah.
Clearly some listeners didn't need those holes filled, but this one did, and I think it's important.
We also got a response where it feels like the narrative that we were trying to perhaps overtly skirt rather than kind of plough through.
Yeah, we were dancing around it.
And it landed very, very heavily on one of our listeners who sent us about a 5-minute voice message outlining exactly the kind of background noise of misogyny that men are steeped in and how it then lands on women.
It's basically a story in which a man who's married and has a work friendship that they get on well, and basically there's a point which in the middle of the night he calls her drunk and then starts to voice a whole lot of basically acts of sexual violence towards her.
He said, and bearing in mind this is unbidden, this is a telephone call in the middle of the night, he said that he was obsessed with her tits and he wanted to fist her.
Yeah.
Maybe for me what I'm interested in is the person who contacted you saying, what were you talking about? And the person who contacted me saying, here's an example of that happening to me. And the gap between listeners or ability to hear, perhaps based upon one's experience of being in the world. The man who did this is older than us. He would have had exactly the same access to pornography that we would have had when we were at a formative age, which is next to none.
You had to really, as we've talked about previously, you really had to go out of your way.
Absolutely.
Or look in your uncle's bedside table. This is a podcast in which two friends talk about the pleasures, absurdities, and imperfections of being human. I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller. Welcome to Midlifing.
Right.
So, I think we're thinking about the story and how it was heard so differently.
I wonder if there's value in understanding how you and I might imagine getting from one listener to the next listener. How would we bridge that gap, that divide?
I don't think we have to bridge the divide. I think reporting back on these two listeners' experiences of the same episode, it feels
like enough.
It's just been such a salutary lesson in how incredibly diverse our listenership is, despite the fact that I suspect it's not particularly diverse, if that makes sense. It's in that the podcast is called Midlifing. I'm not expecting that it's a
big hit
particularly appealing to
the teens out there.
Exactly, yeah. That so.
We really didn't think about that when we named it, did we? Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it does need us to try to chart how you get from one to the other, because neither of those listeners are right or wrong. Those listeners are just reporting back on what that switched on in their ears. And it's so fascinating. And I also don't want to do the whole very lazy gender thing where it's like, well, of course the man didn't hear that because ... because I don't believe that either.
It's funny.
I think it's... Go on.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just about to say that I was thinking about those two versions, these two listening experiences, And I think I worried. I think I anticipated that you would. I think I reduced you, or that I worried that you would make it just about, of course the man would say that and the woman would, and I want to, bizarrely, I want to apologize for the thought.
All you're doing is you're anticipating a hotness to my responses quite often. I think I do tend to kind of go, "Gah!" and sort of have that spiky response to things, despite having many episodes ago said, I'm trying to practice a sense of just curiosity. I think that my mistake in life is when I receive something via a newspaper or a news report, I am very polarized. Mostly because I think that the organs with which I am encountering those materials are polarizing organs. Yeah, I am effectively being told what to think in relationship to it. So I
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I follow a YouTube channel called Politics Joe, and Politics Joe clips bits of the engagements in the Houses of Parliament here in the UK. But it's very, very clear that he is very left-leaning. So I never see Labour politicians making tits of themselves. I just see Tory politicians making tits of themselves. And I don't deliberately follow them. It's just I've clicked on enough of them for the algorithm to think I want to see more of them. And I am now watching them very, not cautiously, but I have to, when I see the headline, I go, okay, so remember that this has been curated and chosen and selected and edited, and it is not the full discursive moment. I was watching yesterday Boris Johnson have an exchange in Parliament where he was referring to Vladimir Corbyn, the idea of
but it's a
Jeremy
point.
Corbyn.
It's scoring points, though, isn't it? It's a very cheap.
Exactly. It's absolutely and very normal in that kind.
And also,
of discourse.
it does score points.
Yeah,
like it's the sort of trope of Corbyn. Anyway,
but I was watching it fully aware of that, and yet still my temperature was so turned up that I had to switch the clip off because it made me so furious. I wished nothing but harm to this man. I couldn't imagine a world in which I would not want Boris Johnson to come to some appalling end, which I don't feel actually when I'm cooler. But when I'm watching it, I just think this man deserves no longer to be on the face of the planet. And I am aware that is about all of the strategies that are put in place that allows me to engage with that material in that moment. And so my cortisol is spiked.
It's actually dehumanizing him, isn't it?
Absolutely. And
it's the same shit.
Yeah.
But it's also maybe this is a long draw. But I think it's also that one of the things that the listener who corresponded with me was saying, well, what are we to do about it, or what, without knowing what the it was, or not being sure about what the it was. And there's just something about, I think, God, there's two words that always just come to mind, which is, and the story that you were describing of this man saying this to the other listener, and I don't think it's that difficult. I do not think it's that difficult to go, how do I treat this person in a way that maintains their dignity? Like, I don't think that's a very complex question to ask. I really don't. But clearly, it's beyond many of us.
I am much more able to feel that in relationship to the two listeners. Because so your anxiety was that I was going to come in hot and go, well, of course that was his response because he's a man and he can't possibly know ... As if men can't experience sexual violence, as if men can't be victimized and made to feel less than. All of these things are true. So I absolutely know that I don't want to lean into that because I'm not curious in a kind of wry eyebrow arched kind of a way. I'm not curious in a judgmental way. I am just like, oh wow, it's really interesting that's how his ears are attuned. Great, that's it. There's nothing more than that. And I'm interested as well that her ears are attuned in another sort of slightly different direction. I think where I stutter or stumble or struggle is when it's the idea of dignity. I don't know how to turn down my the temperature of my response to the man who contacted a colleague, how a person goes from that to the kind of violent objectification and articulation of that objectification, because I'll be really clear, it is not for me to police anybody's thoughts. I can't do anything and don't want to do anything to intervene into that narrative, because we are hugely complex creatures. And our sexuality is so riven with shame and already a kind of a broader social policing that I'm not going to say it's wrong for him to feel attracted to her in this way. The
line
is, you simply never say that out loud.
Yeah, but I don't. This is where I do think the conversation gets messy. Is that I think I feel very strongly that the line between thinking and saying is incredibly fragile. That it's not. That I don't. Well, it's not as big as we might imagine. I guess I'm thinking this line.
Yeah, okay. So, I think I understand what you mean, but we've known each other for what, 15 years? Yeah?
Long years.
Yeah, 15. Long
16,
years.
Actually. 16 plus.
16.
Yeah.
16 years. We've known each other a long time. We have had surface level conversations. We've had deep level conversations. We've been friends. We've been
Backed
cross
off
with one another.
Yeah.
I think we've probably had sharp words with one another, and we've had reconciliatory words with one another. We've run a variety of shades of friendship. If and this is hypothetical. This isn't me. This isn't me doing this isn't me doing a kind of slow burn confession. But if I had thought about you sexually, and if I had used you as a motor to my
sexual
own
desire,
if I had done that, I do not know that there is a scenario
in which you would tell
without
me.
it being invited, without us starting to deliberately and explicitly open up a conversation about our desire and where desire sits and where desire lives, that would be an appropriate thing for me to offer to you.
Oh, so interesting.
Because all it would do is put you in a position of discomfort.
So
Does that make
or
am I being
so clear?
clear?
Clear, crystal. Is that clear, Soldier? Crystal. I think that was a Richard Gere film.
Was it An Officer and a Gentleman?
I think it was An Officer and a Gentleman.
Love lifts us up where we belong.
The thing about what you've just said is, but I think there are also scenarios that are much grayer in which there's the possibility that something might be requited, and that there's a point at which someone goes, I'm going to somehow voice or express this to this person. Not ringing them up drunk in the middle of the night. I don't mean that. But there's a risk involved in crossing that line. The line between thinking something and voicing that. And that happens all the time, right? It would have happened at some point with you and Bob when you first
Absolutely.
met. And I think as teenagers that the enormity of that line and the kind of crossing of that line is terrifying. And I imagine if I were to go back to doing that, it would be terrifying equally as a middle-aged man. But there's still the kind of the gradations or the degrees of the expression of a desire and the expression of something which is stripping another person of their dignity. I think those gradations are not so clear to many people. And you've voiced a very clear example, and I'm completely with you. But there are lots of much less clear examples in which that line is crossed appallingly, but still not, still crossed. And then the upshot is, it's easy to think of examples which are super clear and where it's not grey. And both these, the one you just described and the one that our listener described, are very clear examples. But then there's also the points at which the line between thinking and saying is not as clear. Oh, I'm repeating myself now. Do you kind of get what I'm trying to...
I kind of do, but it's just, I think, again, I get stuck on the enormity of the articulation. I don't think me telling you that I think about you when I masturbate in this hypothetical landscape, just to be super clear.
That, yeah. And don't cut that bit out now.
I won't. I will leave that in, because this is a hypothetical. Because
I'm sure there's a Cyndi Lauper song about that.
But that is nowhere near as enormous.
Exactly. Absolutely.
A crossing of a line as what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
If I were to share that with you, I feel that we could come back from that. I feel that we could negotiate it, but nevertheless, I cannot imagine a context in which that would feel like an okay thing for me to try out as the first port of call.
Yeah.
The first port of call would surely be, testing things out about, oh, that top looks really pretty on you, Simon. I've always really loved the way you dress. I think you're a really handsome man.
This is not true, because you just go on about my technical clothing. But clearly this is an entirely hypothetical situation.
Absolutely.
You would never say that you dress really well to me, just to be clear. Motherfucker.
I'd also probably never say that your hair looked nice either.
Even though it does, let's be clear.
I mean, you have hair. I mean, that's true. It sort of sweeps
Simon,
towards me like a wave of effluence, but still.
I really like the way you have hair.
Hey,
so let's talk about low bars here.
Your follicles are working. They're on your head. Congratulations. I mean,
you know how to set up any conversation, don't you?
So if I wanted to get into that territory with you, I agree with you that there's a way to approach it, and that there's a step between thinking and speaking.
Yeah, and it's often a scary step, I imagine.
Yeah, but I think what I'm kind of bumping up against is not my inability to okay, it is absolutely my inability. It's my inability to work out how I could ever square that. I'm getting all bumbledy around. It's just going back to that idea of dignity. It's that idea of wanting to keep. I struggle to understand how to give dignity to the person who says unbidden.
No,
I think.
Sorry. I'm sorry. You misunderstood. That's not what I was saying. But
okay.
I don't think that's what I was saying. But what I'm saying is for that person. Mm-hmm. Like how I guess I'm vacillating between two sort of opposite perspectives here. One is that there's nuances, meaning the line is grayer than the examples we're using. Yeah. The line between thinking and saying. But then the other one, which is not grey, which is how difficult is it? How difficult should it have been for that fucking middle-aged man to go, how do I respect this person's dignity? Well, I don't do it by ringing her in the middle of the night and telling her I want to look at it, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that to me, right? How do we? And so I'm not talking about his dignity, although that's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation,
and we could talk about that. But I don't think
absolutely. And I think because he's abstract and because we don't. Yeah, absolutely.
I also feel a certain. I mean, I don't want to distract from what he's done, but I also feel I see myself in him. Not because I've ever done that, but I don't see the line between how I am as a man and how he is as a man. I don't want to other him, is what I'm saying.
No, I understand that, Simon, but also I think there is another very thin line between not wanting to other somebody and not holding them to account.
Yeah, no, I struggle with this. I yeah. But that is a different conversation, I think.
Because and it's a conversation we've had in the past where it's one of our spiciest that we ended up having to re-record, or I just said, fuck them, and you went like, that's not how you win hearts and minds.
Yeah, but I'm not comfortable with your position on that. I'm not comfortable with my position on it either. Like, I really struggle. I really struggle with yeah.
I think me having said that is exactly why you came into this conversation thinking I was just going to say about the male listener. It's like, well, of course, I've set you up to think that.
Well, I'm not trying to reduce you, but it's funny. I read some.
I think I've reduced myself plenty. So don't worry.
You're fully capable of doing it yourself. But I do think there's. I was reading something the other day about ideology, and I'm just so grateful for your response to this. In part because what this thing said, and I've lost track of where I read it, but that when you're able to predict how people will react to things. This person's writing, that's ideology in play. That all they're operating from is from a sort of ideological lens, and it really hit me this bit of writing, because I started to kind of question how predictable I am given particular scenarios. That I'm going to respond like that. I'm going to respond like that. And so it just reminded me that I don't know, I just really appreciate, I'm glad I was wrong, is what I'm saying. I'm glad you proved me wrong for once.
Stick around, kiddo. You'll be right again soon enough.
Yeah.
This was hard.
Oh, it's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. But I guess it's hard because we're talking in such abstracted terms.
Do you think people will know what we're talking about?
Well, we did. We gave an exact pull quote from the story, so there's that bit. I think people will be able to hear. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the hard bit is it's my difficulty.
Yeah, and I just recognise I've had zero training in expressing myself. There's something going really wrong, or something went really wrong at a very young age when no one was having conversations with me about how we express ourselves, how we express our emotions. Zero. Absolutely no training. And also the role models I had, appalling.
How much were you saved by Lil? The reason I ask is I think all of the work, the gender-based work I've done has been because I live with the kind of woman I live with. So I feel like she has rescued me from a way of a type of masculinity that I think I probably would have with a different partner, simply replicated. And I also know that I started with a relatively good starting point, in that I've got two parents who express their love for one another both in language and in action.
Yeah.
But they also still conform to very particular gender norm tropes as well.
Sure.
Why wouldn't they? They're in their 80s.
Yeah, so I think that two things come to mind. One is I remember us having a smallest little inconsequential fight about, in fact, coming into this flat here, where every time we would walk into sort of around the corner towards the door, I would effectively cut her off. So physically, I would, the way I oriented myself in the space meant that she had to check her stride. And first of all, that's hard to hear, because of all the things I'm proud of, I pride myself on how it is that I orient myself in space and around people. It's quite a biggie for dance people, right? Yeah. But also because of the kind of metaphorical and literal implications of denying someone space. And of course, I could rationalize it very clear, which is about wanting to get to the door quickly, all sorts of things, right? But the upshot was of this very simple, benign example. And the other thing, of course, was that little sister was murdered by her ex-husband. So the presence of domestic violence and the implications of domestic violence are not abstract at all. So in short answer to your question is yes, I've learned an enormous amount about the assumptions I might make about the relationships between how men occupy space and how women occupy space. I've nearly sold and given away all my scuba gear.
Oh my God. How do you feel about that?
I feel very good. I feel very good
good.
that other
That's
people
fine.
will get to use the stuff.
I was going to ask, does that mean that scuba is now a thing that you do with other people's gear, or something that you just don't think you'll ever do again?
I'll never do it again. Never do it again. I mean, I don't say never. I'll definitely go, go snorkeling with Lil, but it's just the palaver and the resources and just too many things that I'd much rather walk places. Things that don't, walking doesn't really consume resources in the same way that scuba does.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I mean, I loved it, and I still would love it. And there's something about the extraordinary experience of weightlessness and the beauty of being freed from gravity is amazing. But yeah, just the cost was, just other priorities really.
Okay. Do you think you'll ever become vegan?
I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately.
I was thinking as I prepared dinner last night about you and Lil and not wanting to bring plastics into the house and things like that. I was just musing. It wasn't last night, actually. That's not true at all. It was this morning as I was making coffee, as I was emptying yet another 1 kilogram bag of coffee beans into my...
Machina.
Well, no, because I don't grind 1 kilogram of coffee beans. I was emptying them into Tupperware and thinking to myself, oh, I wonder how Lil brings coffee into the house. And then I thought, oh, she probably goes to a small-scale roasters where they put them in a paper bag. That's probably how she does it.
No, we take our own containers.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
But you still go to
it's a bulk store, like it's a plastic-free store, a zero-waste store.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have lots of different kinds of coffee, and they all smell as bad as the other.
That's somebody who doesn't like drinking coffee who says that, because they will all smell gorgeous to somebody who does.
That's true.
Yeah. So then I thought, I wonder if they're at the point now where they're thinking, actually, plastics are significant, but wow, if we stopped eating animal products, that would be a huge shift in terms of the impact on the planet.
Well, personal impact, not global impact. Like, it doesn't matter squat, really. None of our behaviours matter squat. But yes.
Yeah, but then in that case, why are you bothering not buying plastic?
There's no logic.
Actually, exactly. So if there is no, if there is no global impact on you going to a scoop and save, then why not just
scoop and save?
Buy everything in a... Well, I find it really interesting that because the one's opened at the top of town, opened about 5 years ago, and it was all of this like massive furore about, oh, it's a zero waste store, blah 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 blah, it's so amazing. And me and Bob walked past it and went, we had one of those when we were like 9 in Quick Save. What's the big deal? And it's just that, what goes around comes around. That idea of you stay on the planet long enough and you see things that were normal become niche because it's a solution. It's like, well, why did you stop doing this in the first instance?
Yeah.
Anyway, and they just become so those non-single-use plastic shops are so avowedly middle class because they're also really fucking expensive.
Yes, it's true, and basically, I shop there as an expression of my middle classness. I'm trying to double. No, I don't. But it's But yeah, I think the contradictions are strange, and I think that's just being human. But
I just want to say I'm not critical of those shops. We do shop in it. I just find it interesting that was a way to save money when I was a kid.
Yeah, now it's a way to spend more money.
And now it's a way to spend more money because I go in there and I think, wow.
But the plastic, I don't know how to reconcile veganism. I mean, partly because when I've been a vegan, and I have been in the past, I've just had all sorts of problems with B12 levels and also and iron levels. Mm. And so then even with vegetarianism, I tend towards that way for sure. But last night we had roast chicken. So yeah. Do I contradict myself? I do.
What, Whitman?
Yeah, uncle.
Did he have porn in his cabinet?
Hang on, did I hear that correctly? Did he have porn in his cabinet?
You just called Walt
Uncle
Whitman
Walt.
Uncle. I was just going with the flow of the conversation.
I guarantee that he did.